he knew that he was in trouble, but he never shared that well with anybody that was close to him, his roommate or etc. He did share it with us as a family. And I think we just thought that he'd be strong enough to pull over this little hump. The lessons that you learn is that you can't also manage from your end here. And for the future, I tell families, intervene anyhow you can. You know, find a way, because a crisis like this can change a person in a few minutes, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
Greg?
Yeah, we believe ours. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, we do not believe our son would have taken his life if he had been here at home. This would not have happened. This is directly related to his military service. Our casualty officer in the military has been very, very, very good to us in helping us. And our casualty officer, though, said the same thing, that we do not believe your son would have taken his life if he was back home. And, you know, every other benefit that the military provides to families has been afforded to us. We were flown to Dover to greet the body, and a very emotional experience, and we had a military burial and the 21-gun salute, and Janet was presented the American flag, which is a very moving ceremony. But the issue of presidential condolences, in fact, we were shocked. President Obama has set up the suicide task force, and I began to talk with Brigadier General Colleen McGuire and members of staff there, and they were very helpful and wonderful. And during those conversations, I mentioned, by the way, you know, when do you think the letter comes from the president? And she goes, I don't know, I'll check it out. And we talked again a few times, and every time at the end of the conversation, you know, how are you guys doing and all that. And I say, by the way, when are we going to get the letter from the president? And on our third conversation, one of the staff members said to me, oh my God, Mr. Kiesling, I've just discovered there's a long-standing policy that prevents the president from acknowledging the death of a soldier who takes his life in the war theater by his own hand. And I nearly dropped to my knees. I was shocked. And I just said to her that I think this is a policy that should change. Our loss is no different. He was on his second tour. The investigative report shows that he was a good soldier. One of my favorite comments in the report is his unit commander, unit leader says, I wish I had 15 Kieslings. He was a good soldier. He helped other soldiers. In fact, there's a soldier back stateside today who was at risk of suicide. The chance he intervened to help. And we got his uniform back, and when my sister was packing away the uniform, she felt in the pocket and pulled out the suicide information card. He had it in his pocket of his uniform, and he helped other soldiers, but he was unable to help himself. And so our grief is deep, and you know the letter won't stop. We'll still be hollow inside for the rest of our lives. But the acknowledgement from the president that our son gave his life in service to the causes of the United States is important to us, and I think it should be important to the hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of suicide victims in this war in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. It's my understanding that the suicide rate in the military is for the first time surpassed the civilian suicide rate. The mental health issues are quite severe. And so we're just simply appealing to the president to change the policy, to offer condolences to the families like ours that are struggling and suffering with the unique form of suffering a military suicide leaves in its wake. And it's been especially hard for us. The president has been on TV, and we've seen news reports where he talks about how he anguishes over writing the letters to the families. He was talking about, you know, whether he would deploy more soldiers to Afghanistan, and he said he has to think long and hard because he has to anguish and write those letters to families
In
but
fact,
our family is
Greg
not
and
one of
Janet, we
those.
wanted to play one of those clips of President Obama talking about writing those letters to fallen soldiers being one of the hardest parts of his job. This is what he said to veterans of foreign wars in August.
They're the families that my wife Michelle has met at bases across the country. And the spouses back home doing the parenting of two, the children who wonder when mom and dad may be coming home, the parents who watch their sons and daughters go off to war, and the families who lay a loved one to rest in the pain that lasts a lifetime. But as we protect America, our men and women in uniform must always be treated as what they are, America's most precious resource. As Commander-in-Chief, I have a solemn responsibility for their safety. And there's nothing more sobering than signing a letter of condolence to the family of servicemen or women who have given their lives for our country.
That's President Obama. Greg and Janet, your response.
Well, that our family and the hundreds of families like ours are not part of that group. And it's almost inconceivable to me and to Janet that this could be a policy. We don't know where it comes from, why it's there, how far it goes back, and what the purpose.
Has your congressional delegation intervened?
Oh, yes, they've, Congressman Burton, Congressman Carson, Congressman Hill, Senator Bayh, all of them have been aggressive, I would say, in trying to reach out and say, can we change this policy? It is our understanding that it is under review now. Again, I just come back, what could be the reason and why would it not just be automatically changed? Suicide historically has not been a nice thing in society or in the military, but there's been great strides made in recent years. There's General Graham, who he was in People magazine, whose son had a son who died in combat in Iraq, and then a son who died stateside of suicide. And I think General Graham is one of the heroes that is really pushed to make changes about things like us being able to fly to Dover and to greet the body and to bring forward. And I just feel that maybe President Obama didn't even know this was the policy. It's one of those lagging changes that maybe it's just not caught up. And you know how hard it is to push for this. You do feel guilt, and you have this pain, and maybe other families, it's been hard to come out and make this push, but that's why we're here today.
And
to say, please, President Obama.
Yeah.
Why would this be important to you, to receive a letter from President Obama?
I thought about it for a long time, and Chancellor was extremely precious to us, and I sat around thinking, he died on foreign soil for us, He sacrificed his young life, 6 years, and a letter from the President is a little bit of closure to show us that he appreciated our son's life. And I know he's busy with a lot of issues, but this is not one that is so hard to change. I mean, it would give us some closure, some feeling of that we were appreciated, our sacrifice was not in vain. And that's why I really am pushing forward for families like us who have suffered and will continue to suffer, receives a letter from the President thanking us for our son's life or a person's contribution to this war.
I want to thank you both very much for being with us. Greg and Janet Keisling lost their son, Chancellor Keisling, took his own life on June 19th at Camp Stryker in Iraq. It was his second deployment to Iraq. He had served in the military for 6 years, still waiting for President Obama's condolence letter. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. They were speaking to us from Indianapolis, where they live. We'll be back in a minute.